We've had a very experienced guest here today, Shruti Shivshankara. Welcome to So What's Next. You've had a bag of experiences working at Pepsi, then at Strudel House, which is your own company, and then again at Cure Foods. So I'm very excited to have you here today on the podcast, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff about marketing as well as the career part about marketing eventually. So the first thing that I want to start off with is that you started your career at Pepsi, right? So at the end of the day, when I look at it, Pepsi is just a soft drink company, but it has scaled itself so much globally. So why is that? Like, how is it so different from other companies that it has managed to do it on a global level?
Okay. So first of all, thanks Yashas for having me over.
Yeah.
This sounds like a very fun thing to do.
Yeah.
All that accumulated over the last a decade or so. If I could share that and make your
Please
learning
do.
experience
Yeah.
better for others, I think that would be fun. So thank you
Yeah.
for having me over. Now circling back to the question on Pepsi being a mere beverage but having achieved a global scale. I'd attribute it to it's a very good question, and I think we'll have to. It has a very layered answer.
Yeah.
So first of all, Pepsi is one of the cola brands within the kitty of PepsiCo's beverage portfolio.
Correct.
So PepsiCo as a company sells food as well as beverages, and
Yeah.
Pepsi Cola happens to be one of their carbonated soft drinks.
Yeah.
So in its kitty, it also has Mirinda, 7-Up, Mountain Dew,
Lipton iced tea.
Lipton iced tea, and now there are energy drinks like Sting.
Yeah.
Then there's Tropicana. So it has a kitty of products which are beverages. Then it's also years ago, about more than 50 years ago, is when Pepsi Cola, the company, merged with Frito-Lay's. So it got in the basket of food and beverages.
Okay.
So a natural thing is for food and beverages to become consumed together.
Yeah.
And if you could sell it together, if you could transport it together, because the whole machinery is a very heavy one.
Yeah.
What we see today is when you walk up to a store and probably say a food hall, you open a cooler and you pick up a can of Pepsi. What you would see is that the way the cans and the bottles are arranged is pretty much similar throughout the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
While it might just seem like a simple thing to us as a consumer. So whenever you walk in, you always have the Pepsi cans at the top, then there is Mountain Dew, and there's something new that's launched on one corner. So there's a science behind it. It's something called as planogramming.
Okay.
So it is a combination of well thought through marketing approach plus a great execution, the business model, and of course the brand marketing, which is has been consistent.
You also mentioned about when you go into a store, you open the cooler, and then there's like a set, it's an order where they've placed it. So can you tell me something about that what is the psychology behind that? How do you get the retailer to actually frame it in that manner every day?
Sure. So again, I'll come back to the business model that Pepsi operates in. There are different models it uses for different geographies.
Right.
So the example I was referring to was is referred to as planogramming.
Okay.
So planogramming is nothing but arranging your products within the Pepsi Visi cooler in a certain format. Mirinda was launching Mirinda Apple. So intuitively, as an Indian consumer, taking an example of an Indian consumer, we read most of the things from left to right.
Yeah.
So intuitively, the first spot that we go on to any aisle or bookcase or any particular interface where you want to explore or look at a particular thing, you go from scanning from left to right.
Yeah.
So intuitively, the top left corner is the first thing that you'd notice.
Okay.
So whenever you walk into a cooler of cold drinks, like there's a fridge stocked with cold drinks, you go in with the intuitive understanding that here I'm going to get all my colas, my juices, my yogurts and water and all of that. But so that the company is able to catch the consumer's attention within the first exploratory moment of truth at the cooler, so they've chosen the first top left corner for introducing a new product. So this is something that day in and day out, it's a well-oiled machinery that works consistently every day. That's why it's called fast-moving consumer goods, which is FMCG. That's a
Yeah.
category.
Yeah.
And beverage particularly is classified as fastest, it's a
Moving good.
daily,
Yeah.
fastest moving product. So so the science, so that's the consumer insight that one particular action of a new launch
Yeah.
is usually placed there, so that whenever the consumer walks in, that's the first
Thing
product
that
that's
they notice.
discovered. And
Right.
then so the exploration or that trial, the chances of trial happens, because unless you've discovered the product, if they would have kept it somewhere else in the fridge, or it stacked somewhere else, the chances of discovery is lower.
Yeah.
So everything, right from stacking of the products to the packaging that you see, to the billboards, everything comes from a comprehensive marketing plan which the company makes.
It's strategically planned.
It's everything is strategically planned, and there is a well-oiled machinery that does it. So your question was, how do you ensure that the retailer does it?
Yeah.
So planogramming is something that the salesperson from Pepsi side actually does it.
Okay.
So it was something new that I learned as a new B school
Yeah.
grad when I went in, for my first experience of what Pepsi as a company was. Is what we see are the glamorous ads and the products, but the well-oiled machinery is the operations and the sales teams within the
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
which actually execute this entire thing and bring it to reality.
True.
So
True.
every day there's a salesperson. If you just take a walk on a particular road, say Khar West, we're walking on this lane, there'd be about 10 to 12 retail stores, and each of them would have stock, the beverage stock shared, shelved in one place or kept in a visi cooler. It's shelved in a particular format because they every salesman follows one particular route, and that's their daily task.
Yeah.
And they have to go and refresh that planogram every day.
Okay.
So that's how that consistency is maintained. And of course, there are different marketing incentives. There was one question that you earlier had about not just about ATL is above the line marketing, which is all the ads that we see.
Yeah.
There's something called BTL, where you activate your retailers, your shopkeepers. How do you incentivize a shopkeeper to stack one particular product or a brand and versus another?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
that all of these things have an organized marketing approach, where there are calendars made, and there's an annual plan, marketing plan.
Yeah.
This falls into that.
So now Pepsi Co as a company, it's very huge, and we know that they have basically established themselves globally, competing with Coca-Cola and everything. But as Pepsi Cola is there, in the beverage industry itself, but when they were there, like when they started out, I don't know when they started out in India, but then how did they establish that market over here in terms of marketing the product? So you said that I think they partnered with a lot of celebrities,
brands also.
local
Yes.
brands also. Like I didn't know it had acquired Sting as well,
Sting is a PepsiCo brand.
yeah. So I didn't
asset.
know that. So
Okay.
yeah. So how did they basically set up in the minds of the consumers that we are the brand that is here, and how can other brands basically learn from them who are trying to enter the industry?
Answering your first question, that how where was a brand like Pepsi able to expand globally, was strategically planning their geographic expansion. So to enter the Indian market, I think there was a lot of resistance back then, around the early 90s, in terms of regulations. This whole privatization and globalization was still just at the starting point.
Yeah, 91.
And at that point of time, for Pepsi to enter the country, Coke, anyway, as you're aware, entered through a purchase of acquiring Thumbs Up.
Yeah.
So Thumbs Up was the biggest drink that was available,
In India.
It was a hit in the country,
Correct.
in the Indian market. And Coke took the route of acquiring Thumbs Up, Limca, and then, entering the market.
Yeah.
For Pepsi, they while they did enter, they also acquired a brand called Duke's. Duke was something very popular back then,
Okay.
and that was the strategy they used. And they had two operating models. One is so there are bottlers. So there were two models that the company used. One is Coca-Cola largely operated in a Kobo model, which is company owned, company operated. Whereas PepsiCo within India used a combination of Kobo and Fobo, which is company owned, company operated, and company owned, franchise owned, franchise company owned, franchise operated. Sorry. So that's how, with the combination of these, for each of the markets, because if you look at the entire country that India is, each state operates as a different market. There's something that interesting that you might discover is that within the Indian market, the Tamil Nadu market behaves very differently from a Punjab market.
I've heard about it.
Yeah. So 7-Up as a brand sells most in Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
At least for the last 10 years, that's what I'm aware of, that the sales for 7-Up, it was a heavy 7-Up driven brand. And Karnataka as a state was it's called a battlefield because there's a cut-to-cut, neck-to-neck competition with Coke. And say Andhra Pradesh was again a Coke stronghold, wherein so all this kitty of brands is what any say a representative of the company would enter the market with.
Yeah.
So if your product was a fast selling, fast moving brand, that gave you an entry easily.
Right.
And then you took in your entire kitty of 10 other, your water, which was Aquafina, then your Tropicana, all of them went in as a entry strategy into that retail store.
Yeah.
It's gotten very detailed, but circling back to answer your question, so it is that fine-tuned strategy of picking relevant brands in the particular geography and also customizing your products to suit that consumer's requirement. For example, within India, within PepsiCo's portfolio, Nimbu's masala soda was launched, which was it's a global brand of 7-Up, but then it's again customized for the Indian consumers' palate, because Nimbu Pani is something that across the country it's
consumed heavily.
So that's one example of personal, customizing your products, your global brand, and adding brand extensions or innovation to suit your
correct
market.
Correct. So like you said, Coke also. So Indian states, like different consumers have different perceptions or taste, preferences for Coke, Thumbs Up, whatever it is. So this is like very interesting to me, and if I'm talking about Pepsi, I have to talk about Coke at the same time. And the thing about Coke is that they use neuromarketing very well. Like they have been here since 1899, and not here but globally. And they have these 5 senses that they target a consumer with, which are our 5 senses. And there's a sense of eyesight also that comes in, where in sports marketing, as far as I've seen, Coke has marketed itself very well in that the color that they have, the red color, red and white, it highlights very well behind a stadium or behind somewhere, where you can see it very clearly.
Prominently.
And that sets a perception in your brain that, okay, this is a company that is that I have to check out in a mind of a first time consumer. So can you tell me about neuromarketing a bit? Like how are companies like Coke and everyone else in the B2C market using neuromarketing as a tool to target the consumer?
So see, neural marketing. So basically, what's the entire logic or approach behind neural marketing? It is to make a space in your consumer's mind and their life and their heart. That's about it. That's our end objective. To be relevant in a consumer's life is when you become relevant to get a share from their wallet. Right? So creating that niche for any brand for itself inside a consumer's mind is the end objective. To do that, if you do the background, that's the homework, is to understand the consumer better. So what are the various ways that you can understand the consumers better? One is the traditional approach. I know neural marketing is like a fancy term that's coined, but the fundamentals of marketing remain the same, wherein you want to understand
your consumer.
So, for example, if I'm talking to Yashas right now, I want to understand what is the objective that Yashas is doing this podcast. He's trying to help other students or the community to get for them to get an understanding of what else out there. So I'm able to understand your objective. So it's the same thing with the consumer, and hence accordingly communicate what is it that your product stands for, what is the service that it offers, and all of that. So this is the fundamental.
Yeah.
So in neural marketing, what happens is feedback or a communication feedback that we usually have in market research. That why do you use a certain product? These are straightforward questions that we use in market research. In neural marketing, you also measure people's physical reactions or read how the brain responds to it. And see and accordingly test the validity of your campaigns.
Yeah.
So it's termed as neural marketing, but any campaign that we do, usually any brand does, there's a lot of money, budgeting and planning that goes into it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot at stake. So a logical approach to it would be to first test it on as a pilot on a particular set.
Yeah.
For example, if you're cooking something new, you'll first take a spoon and see whether the rice is cooked, is the salt more. So you always try that, right? So neural marketing is used
primarily on first 4-5 people, and then if they see
a considerable sample size, I would say 4-5 is too small. But then considerable sample size depending on the market that you're addressing.
Correct.
So you'll always test your, for example, you can take an example of say a Super Bowl campaign that PepsiCo was launching. And they had their campaign planned out, and they wanted to test it on one particular set of say consumers and see what was the response. And these days there are multiple tools and techniques, especially using artificial intelligence, face recognition, image recognition, and all of that, with which we're able to perceive or at least derive some 4-5 measure 4-5 objectively measurable reactions or parameters that can help a marketer deduce whether this consumer would then consider my product or a brand. That would be one. Or would they go in for a trial? Because essentially, through all our marketing campaigns, what are we trying to do? We're trying to either build awareness for the brand so that people get to know
or set
what
up
this
a perception.
Build awareness, set up a perception, or communicate the understanding of what a brand stands for. So that's what is branding, right?
So actually in Hyundai did that, where they were trying out, they got some people in, and they wanted to see how do they react to their structures of the car, different car models, and how do people react to that, and based on that they select the best model. I don't remember what the term is called for that particular kind of neuromarketing, but people came in, then they saw that they were just shown images, and then the first thought that came into their mind regarding the car model or structure, they captured that thought, and then based on that they actually decided their models, and then they decided to market it further. So that's the thing, that neuromarketing is used a lot in like everyone, but it's expensive.
It is, but I think with technological advancement, it's improved a lot. A recent example where I at least use it in my campaigns was when I was working with Eat Fit. We had to plan. We had multiple films, ad films that we had shot with a particular celebrity, which is Devdutt Padikal, and we had to evaluate which would have been the best of these clips that would work for our IPL season or the ICC T20 that we were partnering with. Because these were sporting events where we could reach like a mass audience, right? So to evaluate that, we had used one of the AI services. They're based somewhere in Europe, and it was purely based on image processing and visually measuring and tracking the eye movements of consumers. So it was done on a sample size. There's a company that does it. The name's not coming to me right now. But they played these particular ads, and we had a particular set of questions, which is market research. So for the benefit of your larger audience, market research segment or consumer insights, this is a segment which particularly addresses this all the background homework that we do before we get into the advertising part of it. So the entire brand marketing and marketing of a brand consists of 3-4 big pillars. One is the market research and consumer insight, which gives you this particular understanding of what is a service or a product that it addresses various business
Questions, yeah.
questions. One is giving you an understanding of your consumer. It can be product prototype testing, if your campaign is working or not. There are multiple use cases, but that's one key leg that if you want to explore a career within marketing, market research, consumer insights is something, especially there's a lot of analytics that comes into play.
Yeah.
Since you're,
You know, I
have
was
the
going to
analytics
ask you about that.
background,
So my next question that I want to ask you is about Reliance has acquired Campa-Cola,
Yes.
right? And in the beverage industry again, what can Reliance do right now if they are entering the Indian market to basically set themselves up to compete with Pepsi and Coke, not only in India but globally as well, using, it can be data analytics, social media, IPL, anything.
Mhm.
So if you were the marketing head over there, what would you do?
Quite an interesting question, actually. Reliance entering the beverage market through Campa-Cola is quite a disruption, I would say.
Yeah, okay.
That's happening currently, that the market is seeing. From the perspective that I have the industry right now, I think Jio and Reliance as a group of industry has a lot of leverage that it can use in terms of distribution.
Yeah.
The entire beverage game within the country is, there's one big aspect of it is availability and distribution. If they're able to crack that, I think half the game is won.
Okay.
So if I had to take an approach for this, of course we'll have to go through multiple parameters, but Reliance already has a setup of online, their e-commerce channel, which they already have ownership of,
Yeah.
which is operational
Yeah.
in the top 20 cities, I'm assuming. So even if they cover good amount of presence within the first 15 cities that they're available in on e-commerce, I think they would have achieved the first leg of building that brand presence at least.
Okay.
In terms of brand marketing and communication, they've already acquired a brand which has had its own DNA, and Campa-Cola has had its own legacy.
Yeah.
So how they bring it back to life and make it relevant within.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a challenge because
That's
I
the-
think Campa-Cola has a lot of nostalgia with the 90s
Yes.
kids and everyone. So how are they basically getting that nostalgia back to the people today with like the Gen Z public? So I think that can be a challenge, or either that can be like a huge hit if Gen Z people like it. So again, that is, I think, how will they market it and how will they deliver the product according to that. I think it will be a big deal.
It's definitely a wait and watch on what they do and how they play it out. There are 2-3 things which if I had to do it, I would look at. Would be, first of all, to understand how is it that I can bring back. So the segment of consumers right now in the country who relate or have that nostalgic association or connect with the Campa-Cola brand
Yeah.
is your set of consumers which are not really the biggest chunk of the pie.
Okay.
They are your parents, 40 plus,
Yeah.
male, female, that's the
Demographic,
consumer.
yeah.
That's a demographic, that's a consumer set which relates to, your Campa-Cola. But then for the next 10 years, your Gen Z and your
Gen X.
millennials
Yeah.
and, the other term,
Yeah.
what's the new
Gen
term?
X.
Gen X. And all of them will have to get a reintroduction of what this brand stands for.
Yeah.
It can be done in 2-3 ways. One is either pick like a new variation of a product with the same brand name that is relevant to this set a little more, because the current consumer set is much more, the TG is more health conscious, might have more choices or preferences in terms of variety of flavors.
Yeah.
I think those are routes that they could take, but I think it's again a wait and watch.
True,
Reliance
true.
is known to have its own style and interrupting and
Disrupting the
market.
industry. Yeah, that's true.
So,
They have a
yeah.
reputation now, I think.
Yes.
So I find B2C marketing like a really interesting subject to study in India. Can you tell me which Indian company are you fascinated by, or the startup that you're fascinated by in terms of how they have marketed themselves in the Indian space?
Brand, if I had to, that comes to my mind, right now would be Zomato.
Okay.
I think they've done a fantastic job of customizing communication, right from if you look at their various touch points, not just from their campaigns, but also their smaller elements of marketing, like the notifications even, are very interesting and personalized. There's a
Yeah.
lot of human touch to it. There also localization of their brand campaigns to each state and language is something very unique. And
Can
I
you
think
give me an example of a campaign that was like absolutely mind blowing to you?
I don't recollect the what do you say, the campaign line for Zomato, but the current campaign also is quite interesting. The Zomato. However, the people are pronouncing the brand name very differently, and
Okay.
they've latched on to that, and they've created an entire campaign on either this or that, but we deliver the best food to you.
Yeah.
So that's something I found very interesting on how they've so Zomato has been in the public eye and scrutiny very strongly throughout.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah,
you look
yeah.
at how they've leveraged their social media, especially on Instagram and Twitter, I think they've done a phenomenal
I think it's
job.
bang on. So
Yes.
I remember one thing when they
Mhm.
acquired Blinkit. There was this like banner that they had put up. It said "दूध मांगोगे तो खीर देंगे,"
Yeah,
something like
the
that.
out of home,
Yeah.
the overhead.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, doodh is for Blinkit because they
Yes.
deliver like the groceries and everything, and kheer
Kheer
is like
मांगोगे तो हम
exactly.
खीर देंगे.
So that was
Yes.
like very interesting to me. But yeah, along that lines, even Zomato or let's say other startups that are there in the country, like I personally find
Cred is
Cred a very
interesting.
interesting company in terms of how they marketed themselves. And I've spoken about this before also on the podcast that they use like very interesting subjects and they create a satire on it, like basically bring on Rahul Dravid as an ambassador and then making him angry on
Inna
like
Nagar ka
showing him.
gunda.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was like an interesting take. So according to you, how are these companies using data analytics to actually market themselves in the Indian space?
Okay. So currently, we need to understand there are two aspects of what makes a campaign or a brand very interesting, and what is the end objective of a campaign. So any campaign, any marketing campaign that any brand runs, always has an end objective to serve a certain business purpose,
Okay.
either to create a brand awareness, or or achieve a certain target. Say there was a launch of a new product or introduction of a new service, something like that. So attributing a campaign as a success or something that you demark as something that did well has to be a comprehensive, has to be looked at from both the lenses. Whether did it serve the purpose of being there, or did it serve the purpose of creating that noise and creating that niche, or connect with the consumer for the brand. So, taking the specific example of Cred, all their series of ads using different celebrities on creating a satire
Yeah.
with the retro Bollywood effect, all of that.
Yeah.
It is very interesting, creating awareness and a lot of conversations about Cred in general. There was also a parallel conversation or a discussion on how relevant was it. Was it able to communicate what Cred was doing?
No.
Exactly. So that was a bigger question that most of us, as a marketer, I
Yeah.
would ask that what purpose did this serve? It definitely was a clutter-breaking campaign, created a lot of buzz in terms of being on the top of people's mind, and making the brand relevant and say talk of the town.
Yeah.
But did it tell people what Cred did?
Yeah, so I have a very audience take on this.
Uh-huh.
The first campaign that they came out with the Rahul Dravid one, they basically created an awareness about the brand that there's this company called Cred, and the ad is very intriguing, and also people kind of awaited the next ad that
The
came.
series.
Yeah, the series of ads that they came with in the last IPL. So after that ad, they basically started creating like to pay your credit card bills on time, use Cred. So basically, once they created that awareness, they basically leveraged that
piled
to
on it.
yeah. So to basically get people knowing on what the brand is about, and then they kind of use that platform
As
to
a
do it.
premise.
Yeah.
Yes. Coming back to that, so it's very interesting on how each of the campaign serves, and
Exactly.
hence the campaign success or liking or disliking. That's how it gets.
Hmm.
I would evaluate
Yeah,
it.
but how
So-
long is the process of data analytics? Like, let's say I have to come out with a campaign in the next, like, so IPL is going on. So let's say IPL is starting in April. I have to get done with the IPL ad campaign, everything. So how long when do I need to start to actually get ready for the IPL season?
So the first, I think, step in this entire thing would be to work backwards in terms of during this period, how would you want to be relevant and
Yeah.
why choose IPL? That should be the first question as a marketer, and as a business leader, you have to ask that question: that is this something that's relevant, and is it going to what purpose does this sporting event serve
Serve.
within my brand's
Yeah.
say, or my business cycles plan for the next year. Then you work backwards, first of all, by participating in the entire auction, or bidding for those association or sponsorship rights, and basis and sometimes you need not even be a sponsor. You can just use that cricketing period, and if you're intelligent enough, you can ride on that wave by not there's a lot of rules and regulations on how you can be associated with an event,
IPL.
with an event like IPL. So coming back to your data analytics question, it's an ongoing thing.
Right.
So I'll take the specific example of EatFit. So
Okay.
if you look at EatFit as a brand, there is a website, and there's a lot of just like Zomato and Swiggy, consumers share a lot of feedback. So there's a team within the company which sits and goes through analyzes all the data that comes in through your consumer feedback. That is one input leg. There is the other one is
Cookies.
then the entire digital marketing team
Yeah.
analyzes the traffic, which days are the traffic is more, which are the cities, what are the demographics of this traffic. So it's an ongoing event. It's not something that you introduce data analytics 4 months before
Yeah.
for a particular thing.
Yeah.
It's not like that. There is a team that continuously analyzes and understands consumer data
Okay.
and the market data,
What
and
what
reviews
kind
it.
of specific metrics are they looking at when they are like there's a specific team that does it? What are the things that they look at in terms of consumer behavior, consumer preferences, and all of that, and then that gets passed on to the marketing team or someone like that, and then they take it forward.
Right. So it's a coexisting piece.
Yeah.
That is the inflow of I'll take a very specific example. There's a property with EatFit called the Big Sale Day. That is every first week. Within the month, there's something called as Big Sale Day that happens where a sale happens, where all the products on EatFit, be it a breakfast, lunch, dinner, or snacking items across categories, are available at a great discount, or
Yeah.
exciting offers, or there are new introductions, all for this peak period of a weekend consumption,
Okay.
wherein you might want to choose a different category. For example, if you're ordering dal chawal every day, a consumer might want to go have a pizza, because you want to have pizza and watch Netflix, or you want to have a biryani and watch a game of cricket or football.
Yeah.
So this is a property that's created on during the weekends, largely Saturday and Sunday, and so there's an entire team which analyzes the traffic that comes in. What were the products? So there is also post-mortem, and there's also a prep that goes into it. That what are the various banners? Where are the various touch points or moment of truth that your consumer interacts with your brand, be it a particular ad on Instagram, a YouTube ad, or a newspaper print ad that the consumer wakes up in the morning and sees that ad, that there's Big Sale Day coming up today, and there are certain coupon codes that are mentioned, and they can go redeem it. So there are multiple touch points which are activated, and then of course the sales are the ultimate sale of that day is ultimate moment of truth, which is what again circles back to all other KPIs of traffic, of how many coupon codes were actually utilized.
Yeah.
That will also give you an insight into which of your media worked for you.
So there might be like 50 to 100 metrics like this, right?
There are a lot of metrics, and it's a detailed analysis that goes into it. And post the performance of one particular weekend, then you see and understand what is it that worked, what is it that didn't. Probably a print ad didn't work, probably a radio ad worked in that particular city, or you were doing a new city launch, say you entered Jaipur city and you did a radio campaign for 4 days, and you saw that the off takes that were happening on those days were higher. So there's a correlation.
Yeah.
So that's how there are multiple metrics.
And it's like consumer behavior in every city, like you had mentioned, or every state
is very
different.
unique.
Yeah.
Yes, the taste preferences are different.
Yeah.
So food and beverage industry as such is so diverse, and there are so many nuances to it that you need to have a core understanding of who your end consumer is.
Yeah.
That's where data analytics, your question, coming back to consumer insights, it becomes a very key function within any brand's ecosystem, that is brand marketing. So hence it's in the bigger companies, consumer insights is a big vertical in itself.
Like you mentioned Jaipur and other cities as well. So they are very different in terms of the urban cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi.
The metro cities.
Yeah, the metro cities. So in terms of these tier 2 and tier 3 cities, how difficult it is for a brand, not only in the food and beverage space, but in any space in general, to kind of capture, because I think most of the people there are like youth who are spending time maybe on social media or watching the IPL right now on OTT maybe. So how do you kind of capture their attention?
Okay. Very good question, very relevant, because we have a lot of population in the country, which is,
we are the most populated country in the world right now.
Yes, we've hit that number
now. Tier 2 and tier 3 cities comprise the most of it. So that's
exactly.
Yeah.
So these, the population that resides here is suburban, is how you could term them, or largely rural. If you're not addressing rural, but the tier 2 cities, tier 2 and tier 3. So one is definitely your ads which go on television. Yeah, you said that beyond television and social media, what is it that you'd what are the touch points that you would use? So one immediate touch point for in the tier 2, tier 3 cities would be strategic associations with these smaller malls, that they would be there if there was a mall or a marketplace, and the retailers. Retailers are your retail space. The retail space in itself is a big canvas in itself. So there are hoardings that you put up. There are shop facades that you can own and put out your communication. Something that Pepsi had done during its first IPL was create these gate arches, that as soon as you enter a shop, you see that there is something happening, which talks about this association that Pepsi had with IPL through that gate arch. Gate arch is nothing but like a rectangular unit outside. It's a facade which communicates all your promotions and your products.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So there are different such touch points, and another way could be to build the stock pressure. That is, you are available and visible at the retailer, and
like you're forced to kind of see the product until you're basically the consumer starts consuming
discovery. And other things could be like I think ITC and HUL have explored this and seen considerable success. Like Shakti Amma is something that's famous. You must, I would urge you to read up the case study on Shakti Amma, wherein women from rural India, they became brand ambassadors within their cities for particular set of products which the brand would launch, and thus get leeway into those markets. So such well thought through associations and partnerships is how you
can. But there are like a lot of chances of it failing as well, right? So once these brands, or like not only in terms of the suburban cities, but the country throughout, when a campaign fails of a brand, so then after that, what is the process of the brand to kind of capture the sales again that they have targeted?
Right. So interesting question again, because any campaign can bomb or kill. So it can go either ways. But as an intelligent marketer and as a responsible organization, usually you try to reduce the chances of such bombing by doing pilots. Pilots are like, these trial and error projects wherein you test it. That's where your market research again comes in, wherein you test your campaign or communication line or your product or your service, any of this on a particular set of sample size of
Yeah,
consumers.
but like let's say you've done that and the results were good initially, but then something happened and it kind of
Bombed.
failed. Yeah, bombed.
Yeah.
So then what is the process after that?
So I think the first thing is do a thorough understanding of why is it that it bombed, and always take it as a learning.
Yeah.
That's the best thing that you can do in that scenario.
Yeah.
As a startup, as a big company, as an individual, even that you tried something, it did not work. So first is to go into your
basics,
root
like,
cause.
yeah.
The basic. Find out the root cause. What is it that could have been done differently?
Yeah.
Understand that what is the lever that has to be different.
Correct.
Was there a black swan event, like suddenly corona happened and did that impact it? Was it something very nuanced that you had like a campaign running in parallel with, say, elections that month that took away all the eyeballs from and attention from your campaign to something else? Did that
Yeah.
impact it? It could be varied. So taking learnings from that. So it's an investment, right?
Yeah,
Any
yeah,
campaign that's run. So the best approach is to first understand what went wrong, why it went wrong, and then when you go back, it's definitely some bit of loss, but you also have the learnings of what not to do. So you go back
but
with those
then
learnings.
like do you try to launch another campaign immediately in, like, let's say in 2-3 months time, or like do you try to correct that campaign after it's bombed?
So what happened? This question is very case specific.
Yeah.
For example, say a brand launched something new and it failed. Then there would be some 3-4 XYZ reasons why it didn't. So either you would need to address it. For example, take the example of say Cadbury. Cadbury's a few years back, there were insects that were found in the chocolate.
Yeah.
So it was something that needed immediate addressing.
Yeah.
So the Mondelez, the company, got together and launched a campaign to address it head on, address the consumers' concern on hygiene, on safety head on, and it was an immediate launch.
Yeah.
So it differs from case to case basis. Again, the Nestle Maggie
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
classic example on how a company turned it around. And this was a brand that was beyond the company itself. It was owned by the consumer.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
in spite of knowing that there could be something that's not really so good for their health, people were asking and demanding for the brand to be back. So in each case, what you do and how you go about it, and the time you take and the budgeting that you do, all depends on multiple factors. Like, what is it that what was your end objective? If you didn't hit the 100 mark, if you did hit 80 or 60,
Yeah.
hence you calibrate that. So it's a very case specific
Correct.
solution that
Yeah.
you would go for.
Okay. Now I want to talk about the career part. So, but before
Sure.
I get to that, I have one last question in the industry specific questions that I have. It's that what is the most controversial ad campaign that you've seen?
Controversial ad campaign. That's an interesting question. There are a bunch of campaigns which, off late, especially with digital media, have created a lot of stir. But something that I would like to mention and speak about would be probably the Fair and Lovely campaign.
Oh yeah.
Which so it's very funny that as a consumer, as an Indian consumer, said for years we have seen this product be in the market.
We've never
We've not
said any.
seen and scientifically you cannot change the complexion of any
Exactly.
human. And again, the historic baggage that we carry as an Indian
Yeah.
population of the British rule and the colonization and all of that is attributing, or a general unsaid understanding that
Yeah.
maybe fair is better is
Yeah.
how it was attributed.
Yeah.
So that carried on, and nothing wrong with the brand is because that was what was prevalent. Now those thoughts and consumers' understanding of what is stereotypically looking good, or that definition of fair and lovely. I think that's a campaign for years which has run, which nobody really disputed, unless recently, just because social media and everyone had a mic and everyone had a pen,
Yeah.
and the word would travel. It's been raised recently, but that's a campaign I think that's been there with us for a lot of years.
So let's get to the career part now.
Sure.
Before starting the podcast, we were discussing about AI and the jobs in marketing. So on like AI chat GPT mainly, they can create campaigns, marketing campaigns for companies in like 10 minutes or like something like that. So then why do they need people who are in marketing right now? And there's a lot of fear that can hamper the jobs in the future in terms of marketing professionals. So like, what is your opinion on that, and how far do you think it's like relevant, this concern is relevant?
So again, AI is a space that we're all watching out. I think it's something that's evolving so rapidly that every few hours we have some new update on a new version of the Chat GPT or AI bots that have come in, which can cater to various needs, be it marketing or creating new art or coding or
Yeah,
multiple segments,
anything
anything that can be automated or created. AI is
there.
out there to
Yeah.
cater to it. Now, coming back to addressing one question, whether it is going to take away the marketing jobs or take away people's jobs, just like any other groundbreaking technology, there will always be some kind of a recalibration that happens over a period of time. So that's bound to happen. Then again, all our marketing campaigns, creatives, or content, all that we generate as say professionals or as even consumers is something very has a human angle to it.
Yeah.
So things that could be repetitive, or like your email reminders, your captions for your social media posts, or just your consumer CRM, consumer management
Yeah.
ecosystem. These are things that that AI can easily ease the load of people, I would say. That's how it might reduce the number of people needed to do the same amount
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
So there would definitely be an impact and recalibration of resources needed for a particular task. But I firmly believe that the human element in all of this is very important, because we, not just the consumer but also the marketer, is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So and feelings and emotion is something that AI is yet to
Exactly.
imbibe and mirror to an extent that a human would.
So the thing that I even said before, that there's a human touch to it which AI can't solve. And I think the manual jobs will be much in danger compared to the creative jobs that a marketing person brings on.
So I would say there's going to be a calibration. So yes, there will be a change, maybe requirements which earlier we are seeing that currently even in the market. There are mass layoffs that are happening. There's
Yeah.
recalibration in terms of human resource planning that people had done. Twitter has already set precedents on downsizing big time and still functioning
Yeah.
decently well.
30% of the workforce.
Exactly. So there will be recalibration for sure, but coming back to how AI will do it, if I have to take the example of an Indian market and Indian ecosystem, it is still prevalent. It has already made its way, but I think it will take some time for it to reach every other part of the ecosystem, and a complete shift.
Makeover
Yeah,
shift will.
makeover shift will still see about 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
But that's the understanding, with this limited understanding that I have
Yeah,
right now
yeah,
of the
yeah.
ecosystem, which is rapidly
Everyone
evolving.
has a limited
Yeah,
understanding. Right.
that's what I can say. So there will be a recalibration,
Right.
and there will be a shift, and I think this is going to augment our work much more. For example, if you're if I was a student or a professional or anyone in the industry who's starting out, how I would make myself future ready is to first of all not walk away from understanding what AI is and what it brings to the table, but get more friendly with it and become a professional or a resource who can manage both.
But
You-
there will always be, like, sorry to cut you, but there will always be jobs that are like let go of. Like, people always let go because of this, because they're not needed anymore.
Hmm.
And if I think from a CEO or a founder perspective, I think it makes sense to me. Like, why would you pay? I would rather pay
It's an
like,
additional cost.
yeah, some cost to AI rather than a fixed cost to a person, right? So that's what even I wanted to know, that once this comes in and people are laid off in any industry, so what are they going to do after that? Let's say in marketing also, like after this, if your brand campaigns are built by AI, why do the brand people, like people who are basically creating campaigns or data analytics or something like that, where will they go?
I don't think it's going to be as drastic as a complete replacement of a person, but it would be these smaller tasks within a portfolio of things that a person
Yeah.
would handle.
Okay.
So I don't think there'd be an immediate replacement altogether, but a team size that would have been like of 50 people running a particular brand would probably come down to 30. I don't know. The
Yeah.
estimate varies basis the variable
Requirement.
levers
Yeah.
and the markets that the company operates in and the time span that they want to operate in. So it's quite variable that way. Now, replacement, I think, will not be immediate, but there'll be a reduction in the team size for sure. Now, what do you do next? Is
Yeah.
what I would do next if I had to answer it.
Yeah.
That someone else
Yeah.
becomes a brand head and AI generates the entire marketing plan. Is to be able to first of all use AI to fasten and quicken my turnaround times as a person. If I had to prepare as a professional, is I would first of all get acquainted with all the AI tools and see how is it that I can be better within my current productivity or current performance, and have an understanding of what is it that I bring to the table that is little
Yeah.
more different
Yeah.
with my understanding versus the the AI bot.
Yeah. So a lot of students are contemplating between, like, their plan is basically to go abroad, get some experience over there, cover their initial cost that they have spent, come back and then work at a bigger agency, marketing agency. So I wanted to ask you this, that in terms of that, would you like come back and prefer working at a smaller company or a bigger company? I know both of them have their pros and cons, but if I'm in my early 20s or in my mid 20s, what is the things that I should look at and focus my career at?
Okay. Interesting question, and I think with the current ecosystem,
Yeah.
it's very relevant and something that everyone ponders about. First, I'll just give you an example of my personal experience and how it's been for
Yeah.
me, and then how is it that if I were a 20-year-old today, how I would go about my career.
Yeah.
You know, for me, my first 5 years of my career, the first half of the decade was at a one of the biggest FMCG companies in the world, which
Yeah.
is PepsiCo.
PepsiCo.
And it gave me a perspective of how things can work at scale. It was literally a university where you could see and learn on how things are done and already existing. Of course, there are a lot of loopholes you see. There is technology which has advanced at a much faster pace than what probably the industry would have grown at. But you get to see how global brands and global companies operate at scale and are successful. And within such ecosystems, your the system's appetite to try and be okay with failures is there's still like that buffer for brands, for people, for system services, everything. That buffer is always there.
Yeah.
So your learning exposure is immensely high, and you can understand systems and processes which are already set, and you get a very detailed understanding of how things function at scale. And also you get to learn from best of the best in the industry, because largest establishments tend to attract best of the talent.
Yeah.
And their practices in terms of resource management and grooming and training and all of this is at large.
Yeah.
And there is largely an abundance mindset when you're working in a larger company, and it becomes like an university within the industry
Yeah.
for you to learn. So that's how I look at the industry experience within a larger company. One of the fastest startups in the country today to scale, which is Cure Foods, is working with a fast-paced startup today, gives you an exposure to everything. And so in a larger establishment, usually there are systems and processes which might take for a particular product or service life cycle to be longer. Say things you would do like product launches, product testing would probably take a couple of years or even a year. Whereas in the startup ecosystem, you try fast and you fail fast. You learn fast and you move at that speed,
Yeah.
because you need to survive.
Your growth is very high.
Yes, and your growth is rapid. You get to do a lot more. Within my experience with Cure Foods, it was a crazy amount of work that we managed to pull off within the 1.5 years itself, of product launches, testing. Mostly, what in a bigger organization, what you can do within a span of 2 years, 3 years, it was accelerated within a quarter itself. So the learning curve is much steeper. Your exposure and freedom, depending on which organization you're working with or the startup, your exposure is much higher, and you can try different things. The processes, it's not very process driven because you're still forming the process.
Yeah.
It also depends on which stage of the startup you're joining, or which stage of a
Which
company.
stage is the actual, like, you would want to join or you would learn the most at? I think is it the initial stage where it's just like started out, or it's like a growth phase where even the startup is trying to grow and figure things out on their own?
I think at every stage of a startup, the learning is immense. It's crazy amount of learning in every
Okay,
stage,
okay.
because at each stage there are different attributes or skill sets that are required. The
Yeah.
company will demand, the company and the
Will
team
demand something
and
out
the
of
brand
you.
will demand of you certain different skill sets. So if you see a lot of startups also, and if you see the people who are functioning, there'd be a churn of ones who can build it from 0 to 1. There are different skill set of people that would be needed who can build it from 0 to 1 to 10,
Yeah.
from 10 to 100.
Yeah. As a startup person or a founder, what should I look at? Should I look at the degrees or should I look at the skill set? Like, you yourself joined Pepsi after doing an MBA,
Yes.
right? So what is more important to as a founder? Like, what do I look at in a candidate when I'm hiring them?
So if I'm a founder and I'm hiring, first of all, I will hire basis what is it that I want to. What purpose does this person serve within my ecosystem? First of all, you need to understand that there are some resources which will be who will be a long-term resource, wherein they are on a continuous basis. There are a lot of resource who might be a short-term, like a consultant,
Yeah.
or someone who's on a contract basis. It is first of all their requirement within the ecosystem. For example, if there's someone who's building a product, so an expertise always helps. So this is a very specific questions on where the startup founder is and which stage of funding they are, how much money they have. It actually boils down to how much money or budgeting they have,
Yeah.
and also what are the available options in front of them. Sometimes they might have someone who they're very comfortable working with. So that equation matters a lot in the first few days of forming. So if you're a founder who's starting up, absolutely, and depending on your life stage, your exposure to these resources will also be very different.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're just in your 20, probably you're 25 and you're starting up and you're looking at a co-founder, the kind of things that you would look for would be probably complementary versus your skill set.
Yeah.
And in your team would be to have those hands and legs to do a lot of things. So where you are as a founder matters a lot, and what stage of funding, what stage of business, product prototyping, service, all of that is what determines how you hire.
Right.
But largely I think cultural fitment is something very, very important, and how you get along as a team, because in a startup environment it's extremely volatile, and apart from volatile, there's a lot of ambiguity in terms of trying new things, doing multiple things. So a comfort with ambiguity, a comfort with chaos is something that will be one of your strengths to thrive in a startup ecosystem. And that's what, as a founder, I would look at also. If that has to be one thing that I would just call
Right.
out.
Yeah.
Others are again are specific to
Yeah. Case to
situation,
case.
case to case basis.
So my last question for today to you is, what is next for you in terms of marketing in this field, in this career?
Very interesting question. That's a question that I have for myself as well, I think. To look at what next, I think I always look back at what it's been so far. So if I have to talk about last 10 years, it has been a combination of one MNC, which has been by learning school of everything related to FMCG, marketing, branding,
Yeah.
professionalism, all of that.
Yeah.
Then I went on to start my own, consulting studio, which is the Strudel House, and a
Yeah.
merchandise line called Project Strudels. There's like a whole set of learning and satisfaction that's built over there. And the third leg has been with one of the fastest fast-paced startups in the ecosystem currently, which is Cure Foods, where I got to build the marketing vertical, do a lot of their brand positioning, core marketing and brand work of building brands and campaigns over different business cycles. So looking at all these three, I think consumer marketing space is something that's very clear that that's a space that I'll be operating in. What's next? So I'm actually taking this month and the next month off. I'm traveling and taking some time.
So you're gonna think about it.
So I'm going to think about it. There are a couple of things that I'm, entities that I'm in discussion with as well, and I'm also thinking for myself in terms of what is it that will make sense from 5 years from now. So I'm still yet to find the answer, but it's definitely going to be in the marketing, branding, the creative and tech space that I figured is a niche for me. And art as in, it feeds my soul. So that's something that will continue as an extension of my personality. What next is something very interesting. Hopefully I'll have the answer by the end of next 2 months.
Welcome to your early 20s.
Yes. Oh yeah. I think it's always, it's exciting to be in the space because you never know what new you discover.
True.
So yes, that's where I am.
Thank you so much for coming here. Thank you so much for sharing the consumer insights and the insights on the marketing industry as well. So I'm happy to have you here.
Most welcome, and I think it was absolutely my pleasure. I always wish that I had someone who had this podcast when I was 20. So kudos on that. Good job with initiating something like this. I think it will benefit a lot of people, and all the very best to you.
Thank you so much.